I'm Raya Kenny, and I am the founder of the National World War II Women's Memorial Foundation. And it is an incredible honor to welcome you all to this conversation between generations of American women who have courage, sacrifice, has changed the course of our history. I'm here because for the last 13 years, I've worked to establish a memorial to these women for the impact they made not only on World War II, but for our world writ large. You paved the way for my generation, and I have so much to thank you for. The Rosies showed us that each and every one of us, that when we put our mind to it, we can do anything. 80 years ago, millions of American women stepped out in unprecedented ways into the workforce, building tanks, planes, and ships that kept us going during the war. They worked with fire and steel, with grit and precision, and every woman I'm sharing the stage with this afternoon answered this country's call, with the conviction that they could do what was needed, and they did. That deserves recognition, so thank you, ladies.
I can't hear her.
I'm going to introduce them, run them down the line, and then I'll start asking you a bunch of questions. To my left, we have Miss May Cryer, who built B-17s and B-29s in Seattle, Washington during the war. And since her work there, she has worked tirelessly to advocate for the Rosies and for the generations of women who have followed her. She is a driving force behind the Congressional Gold Medal that the Rosies achieved in 2024. So thank you for that, May.
Thank you, Ryan.
Next to her, we have the inimitable Maxine Boeve. Is that how you say your last name? Amazing. She began work at the Puget Sound Navy Yard when she was just 17 years old, running machinery to build parts for the battleships, the aircraft carriers, and the submarines. To her left, we have Miss Delphine Klaput, who worked as a classified documents clerk in the B-24 factory in Baltimore, the Glen L. Martin aviation area, while her husband George flew over 32 missions in the B-17s that were being built. Next, we have the incorrigible Colonel Allison Black, who is a veteran of over 32 years military career. She recently was the commander of the 1st Special Operations Wing, and she has flown over 3,400 hours, 2,000 of which were combat. Next, we have Miss Jeanne Gibson, a welder from the Todd Pacific Shipyards, who later continued her service in Alaska for the Army Transportation Corps. Thank you. And at the very end, we have Miss Erlinda Avila, who grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, to Navajo grandparents. And after the Pearl Harbor bombing, she stepped up as a riveter for Goodyear in Phoenix. Welcome, ladies. Miss Avila, my first question is for you. You riveted airplane wings in the heat of Arizona. What do you remember most vividly about working there? Miss Erlinda.
What do you remember? What do you remember most vividly about your first job?
My first job was going to school to learn how to do the job.
What were your fondest memories? Or maybe worst memories?
Oh, the worst, oh God, that's...
I'm ruining the panel, I'll be quiet.
All memories.
My worst
No,
moment
stay right
in
here.
my life was when my brother Pete was drafted. As soon as he turned 18, he was drafted. And I walked him to the armory, because that's where he was supposed to report to, and I walked him there and to the armory, and the door opened, he walked in, and I didn't see him for almost 4 years. He was sent to Japan, and I didn't hear we used to get letters once in a long time. I would get a letter. But it went for about 2 or 3 years, and I didn't hear a word from him. So I told my mother, I took off of work from Goodyear, told my mother, I want to take you to the Red Cross, Mom, and you're going to tell the Red Cross people there that we haven't heard from Pete in 3 years. I said, and we want to know what happened. Is he alive? Is he dead? Or no, they found about 6 months, I don't know when it was that I got information from them that my brother had come down with malaria, and he was in the field hospital in Yokohama, Japan, somewhere up there. And, but it took him how long to bring him back to the United States, and he was put in the hospital in Texas. And he spent almost two or 3 years there at the hospital with this malaria. It must be a terrible disease. You know, but Pete was never the same young man that left my house. He was very, very different, very quiet, and he never wanted to talk about it. I guess he wanted to forget. I don't know. But once in a while, I would talk to him, and he would tell me a little bit about it. He was, I would say, a truck driver, and he would carry supplies to the front. And and the road was in the middle of these two mountains, I would say, okay? And the enemy was up there, you know? And my brother said every time we got to the entrance of that hill, you know, between two hills, he said, sister, he said, I would get out of that truck and kneel down and pray that the Lord would get safe to the front so I could deliver the supplies that those people needed up in the front.
Thank you, Erlinda, for sharing that story. I really appreciate it, and I'm sorry that happened. Really, really hard to deal with the aftermath of that. May, I'm going to ask you about how it felt to know you were building the B-17s and B-29s that our men were off flying, and how you felt, and not only that, but going into a workforce that previously wasn't open to women, and any of the things you had to face going in.
Oh, I've experienced so many things, Ray, and we just love this lady right here. You know, I built B-17s and B-29s during World War II at Boeing. I worked at Boeing in Seattle. And, you know, we produced at least 400 B-17s a month. I think that's the record. But, you know, it's amazing what women could do. And, you know, when we finished those B-17s, I loved working on the B-17 more than the B-29. When we finished those B-17s, they were perfect. We moved them out on the tarmac, and they were perfect. When the men got a hold of them, they ruined them. Many of the men get insulted when I say that, but you know that they were, when every rivet counted. They made sure that we did an outstanding job, and I don't think that there was any comeback from what us women did. And we did everything. All of us women here, we worked on everything possible to help our men and to save our country and our world, really, we saved. I think it's so outstanding. I come from a pioneer background, or my great-grandparents came from Austria. They pioneered in what was known as the Dakota Territory at that time. And we're strong and hardy people. And this is a generation, I think we were all strong, hardy people. And I think that's so important. And you know, Ray, when the 1920s, it was the worst decade in the history of our country, I believe. We had the Dust Bowl, we had the stock market crash, we had the Great Depression. And you know, the only good thing that came out of that decade was my mother got the right to vote. And wasn't it way past due, ladies?
Yes. Miss Maxine, I wanted to ask you, you were 17. Did you lie about your age? One. And two, if so, how did your family react to learning that you were going into the workforce? Tell me a little more
Well,
about
it was
that.
actually my dad's idea.
Oh,
I went on a vacation back to Michigan. We grew up in Michigan, and my dad got a job in the Navy Yard while we were helping our allies to fight Hitler. And so he applied to different places, and Washington State, Puget Sound Navy Yard called him. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, then he wanted me to go to work. And my mom says she can stay home a couple weeks before that. And so then when I applied, I got the job. And there was 5 dry docks. It was located by a river that came from the ocean past Seattle. And the big ships would float down that river and come into our dry docks to be repaired that the Japs had damaged. And there was a big, like a gate on there. You know, we'd close the gate and pump the water out of the dry dock, and the ships would settle down into a cradle, and then they could be worked on. And so I worked up in the machine shop on a turret lathe and made mostly plumbing parts for the ships. They were big bolts and things. And one time I came to work, and our dry dock was right next to the gate where I came in, and the machine shop right on the other side of the dry dock, so I was familiar with that area. And they stopped me and says, "Wait here a minute." So there was other people waiting too by that dry dock. And here there was a great big yacht, biggest yacht I ever saw. And President Roosevelt was on the bow. So he came to the front and talked to us a little while. And I think that he was on his way to, I knew I was going to forget.
on his way somewhere.
My brain.
That's incredible. What a
Hawaiian Islands
okay.
that were damaged by the Japs. And I think he was on his way to investigate that, see how that was going.
Yeah. I'm glad he stopped by to say hello to you. That's awesome. Miss Delphine, I would love to talk a little bit more. I was listening to an interview that you did, and you spoke about your high school education and how you had to put that on hold. Would you care to tell the audience how that finished out after your work?
I did graduate from high school, but I was in Grand Haven because my boyfriend lived there, and he got drafted, and I was staying by his folks. And then I was ready to go back to Washington from Grand Haven, Michigan. And his dad says, "Why don't I go to the NYA school first?" That was the National Youth Administration that was special to train young people. So I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and walk to high school before the classes started, and I learned to run a engine lathe there. But then when I got my job, then that was a turret lathe.
Yes.
That was 2 different machines, very similar.
Thank you. I would also like to hear about Miss Delphine's high school education since we're on the
So
topic.
ask me the question.
Yes.
Mine forgets.
I was asking, I heard that your high school education had to be put on hold as well.
Yes,
And I heard that maybe you finished that up.
yes.
When did you finish that up?
My son-in-law, my daughter, and my grandson went to Fort City, Pennsylvania, where I was ready to go into high school. It was in the spring, in September. And my uncle had called my mother and said to her, "I have a job down here for Delphine if she's willing to leave home and school and come to work." And my mother asked me if I was willing to do this, and I just looked at her and said, "When do I go?" I'm packed. So when I go down to Baltimore, he came to get me, drove up to Pennsylvania to get me. And evidently he had everything arranged because I didn't even, it wasn't a question. The only thing I was fingerprinted. And I went 2 days after I was there, I went to Glenelg Martin, Plant 2. They had 2 plants. I requested Plant 2 because he was supervisor in Plant 1. I didn't want to be working where he was working, which was a good idea. And then my work was very stressful. I had to carry around blueprints, and I was a desk clerk on that order. And I had to take care of, now this sounds funny, I had to take care of 12 men. I had to make sure that each one of those men had a blueprint and a small part. Small parts was you could carry them no bigger than your hand. I had to know when they were finished and where they were going.
A lot to keep track of.
Yes.
Great job. And then my last question for Ms. Gibson here is, you were welding destroyers for the Pacific, yes?
I'm having trouble hearing.
Sorry, you were welding destroyers in the Pacific. How did that feel? Do you remember what it was like to be in that space for the first time?
Well, it was one of the things that all of us did. We were, there was the war on, we were all working toward the same end, and I was feeling guilty because I was not involved, and went to Seattle to find a place that would meet my needs with a friend of mine. The doing the work was easy. When you're 18, anything is easy, and welding itself was easy. It was very much like sewing, and I had never done any welding or anything like that before. It was a feeling of being able to help with the war effort and a kind of fitting in where I was needed. I was glad to be doing work, and I will tell you that the people that I worked with, the men were all older enough to be my father or grandfather. They had the work ethic. We worked very solidly. I had done other work before, but it had been a kind of a summer job or something. But it was a feeling of that I was doing something that would count. And I didn't think that it was any big deal. It was just that that was what was available. My friends, one of them became a nurse and so on, and I tried nursing, and just before I moved into the hospital, I realized that I'd made a big mistake. It was not for me. I'm not a nurse. But I was a welder, and I had good feelings about it. And I'm glad that after that, women were able to do jobs like that, and it was found that they could do them just as well as men.
Absolutely. I love to hear it. So Colonel Black, listening to these Rosies talk about their experiences and feeling like, they didn't know the impact they were making while they were making it and their waves came later, I'm curious what resonates with you as someone who served for so many years in the military as a woman, and what you took away from that.
Thank you for that question. Just being up here, I won't stand on your shoulders because that would not be appropriate, but I stand on the shoulders of giants. So I am humbled just to be on the stage with these incredible women. And I think what resonates most is that man or woman, people want to be seen, valued, and heard for what they bring to the fight. and you were just describing, you wanted to do something. And you went and sought an opportunity to make a difference and make an impact. We're all searching for that sense of mission and that sense of purpose. And then when you find it and people see what you bring to the fight, and they allow you to do it, like that's inspiring. And then through your actions, through your grit, your sassiness, your determination, you just set the example for us to follow. Yep. And I think the example is, if you can't tell me yes, you can't tell me no. And I'm going to continue to find a way in what I'm good at, find a way to contribute to the greater mission, which at the end of the day is this incredible country we live in.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, thank you.
Well said. So, on to the next. We all know you are entering a space where women weren't welcome. There wasn't precedence for what you guys are doing. This is a free-for-all, so whoever feels inclined. Did you experience any pushback when you entered the workforce from the men who worked there? And if so, how might you have handled that? How did that feel?
Was that for me?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I've already said that the men were like our fathers and grandfathers, and they treated us that way. My pushback was not at the welding place. It was, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and the nearest veterinary school was in Ames, Iowa. So I had my stepfather write a letter about entering, and he said, he got the letter back and said, we do not accept women because it's too hard work. I don't know, something like that kind of stiffens your backbone, and you say to yourself, I'm going to do something. And, well, I did. I followed women's jobs and found that I quit 2 of them because they did not recognize that I had value. In one job, I was fine and had been promoted and everything, and then what happened was I found out that my file clerk was making $5 a month more than I was because he was a man, and I quit. Then again, I ran into the business of in a big company, working and being promoted and so on over time. After a couple years, I asked the boss, where can I go, from here? And he said, you're young, you're going to get married and have babies. This is the glass ceiling. Mm-hmm. Those are the kinds of things that happened. They did not happen to me during the war. It was after the war. Oh. And so it gives you energy to go ahead and do something else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good on you for pushing forward. Yeah. May, did you experience any pushback when you first started?
I didn't have any trouble with men. They used to love when we hired in at Boeing, we had 2 weeks training. They take us down, they put a piece of sheet metal in the vise, and they teach us how to rivet or how to use the mechanical tools, rivet and buck. And 2 weeks later, they put us right into the factory working on these huge bombers. Well, we were so young and naive. Most of us were 17, 18 years old when we went to work to save our country. And it was so amazing because I didn't have any trouble with men, but they loved to tease us. I worked with a man from Ohio, and he used to send me to the tool crib for the most ridiculous things, and I didn't know the difference. And when they just laughed, they'd have such a, they just thought that was so funny to pull the wool over our eyes. But we got smart. We knew. One day they went to send me to a tool crib for something, and I wouldn't go. And that was one day when we really needed it.
Oh, no. Miss Maxine, what is one of your fondest memories of that time?
I think when I got married, after I got out of the machine shop, and then my husband was discharged because the war was over.
How about you, Miss Delphine?
Oh, my.
A fond memory you have from being in the workforce?
Oh, when I had a lot of memories from that because I was treated so well. It was only 2 ladies that worked around me. And the men were just, it was always, don't worry, honey, we're watching you, nobody's gonna hurt you, because they could tell I was scared, you know. Coming from a little town and going into this huge factory, we're taking care of you, nobody's gonna hurt you. Just do your job. So that's what I did. They gave me, actually, these men, they were elderly, you know, but they gave me a lot of encouragement, and I think that's what kept me working there.
Absolutely. I'm curious, as a person who learned about World War II in school, who later learned about the impact of all of the work that you guys did, at what point in your lives did you realize that what you were doing during the war wasn't just a work day? It was making history. It was changing everything. I'm wondering if that ever hit you at any point. No? I'm seeing your head shaking. You want to, why? It just was?
It never dawned on me that it was making any difference. I just went to work and got paid for it.
Same?
Same as me. My goal was, well, I was just out of the hospital and not feeling that well, but I just thought, my father was gassed in the First War, so he couldn't work. My mother did her best to take care of the 3 of us. And my main thought was, I'm going to make some money that I can send to my mother to help raise my sister.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing. Did you guys make friends at that time in the factories, in the places you were working? Were there other women, and did you come together and talk about your experiences, or was it a sort of get up, go to work, go home?
Is she talking to me?
Yeah.
No.
It's open.
My problem, I can't hear her.
Did you make, when you were working, did you make friends in the workplace? Did you just go to work and go home?
Oh, that's easy. We were all friends. There was not any animosity or competition. I worked swing shift, and so it was almost dark by the time I went to work, and at almost 12 o'clock, I was taking the ferry back to home and so on. So my time was devoted to work. We worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. And we had a small room in a private home. There were no things going, but we were tired, we slept, and on a weekend when we would dress up to go somewhere, a day that we weren't working, one of the things that you might find interesting is that when we put our clothes on and started walking, we found that the shipyard boots made kind of a difference, because with women's shoes on, we were walking like Tennessee walking horses. And the friends that we made there did not last, because after the war we were moving on and going back to school and so on. Mm-hmm. So I do not have friends from that era.
I'm sensing, though, at work there was a definite sense, a feeling of teamwork, a feeling of a united spirit. I mean, that's what your generation, the greatest generation, is known for, is coming together. You're all working in unison for the same goal. And Colonel, I'm imagining it was the same for you. Can you speak on how sort of teamwork has existed in your space as well?
Yeah, yes, of course. I think, if you're good at your job, especially in uniform service, nobody cares how tall you are, how short you are, what color you are, what your gender is. If you're good at your job, we want you on the team. Mm-hmm. And when you show up to work, everybody's driven towards a common goal. Much like, you incredible women, you were driven towards a goal to achieve a task. And I think that's the same, it rings true today, and it rang true throughout my entire military career, is we showed up for a mission. We trained together, we briefed together, we execute the mission together from air to ground, we debriefed together in hot wash, and we discussed the lessons learned, and then we came back together and did it all again. And if you had a weakness, we called it out, and I was absolutely called out for any weaknesses I had as well. And then you shored that up, and you got a little bit stronger in those areas. You worked on your strengths to make sure you stayed on point. But that teamwork rings true today, and those relationships, it's unfortunate that you don't have the relationships with them, but the connectivity that we have today makes those relationships so much easier. I can run into somebody I haven't seen in 10 or 15 or 20 years, and we have the same shared experience, and it's like we saw each other yesterday. And that family rings true. Yes, I served in the Air Force, but my brothers and sisters in the Navy, the Marines, the Army, we all are one big family, and because we chase the common goal. So yes, we do have that.
I love it. I think that's beautiful. Miss Avila, at the end over there, I have a question for you. What advice would you give to someone who doubts that one person's courage can make a big difference?
What did you say?
Can you tell her?
Well, hard to hear.
Pass it on. Yeah. What would you tell someone who doesn't believe that one person can make a difference?
What advice would you give to somebody who believes that one person can't make a difference? Do you think one person can make a difference?
Yes, yes, I do.
What advice do you have to encourage them to make that difference?
Follow your dream.
Just have the initiative of what you want to do. And you make the greatest effort to do it. Doesn't matter what you want to do, what you want to work at. If you want it, like I say, we can do it. We sure can. Anything you put your mind to that you want to do and you're interested in doing, and you're going to do it. As per me, okay? I always wanted to drive a semi Peterbilt. Okay, and I seen the sign that they want to train drivers to drive a semi. Okay, I knew how to drive already, but in a truck, but not a semi truck, and a Peterbilt at that. So I seen this sign they want to train drivers to drive a semi truck, and I went home and I told my mother, you know what? I seen a sign over there. They want drivers to go and train to drive the semi trucks. I said, and I want to go. I always wanted to drive one of them big rigs. And she said, no, you're not going because you're going to be gone all the time. I said, well, that's what the job requires. She said, no, she said, you're not going. So, you know, in them days we obeyed. We never said no, you obeyed. So, and so she talked me out of that. So what did I do next to that? I started working at a school, and I became a bus driver. The 72 passenger buses for the school. So that, but I liked it. I liked it, you know, to carry 72 hollering and screaming kids.
That's tougher than a Peterbilt.
But the best students that I ever drove in were the second and third graders, because they would tell me stories that you just would not believe what happened in their homes. You know, in them years, you know, we used to get footsteps, right? So this 6-year-old boy, he came and he had a book of stamps. You could go anywhere and buy candy or food or something. And he showed it to me, and he said, look what I got. He said, I'm going to go we had a little candy shop there at the school. He said, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to buy candy for my friends. And I seen it. It was a $10 coupon book. Okay, you could buy grocery or anything. And I said, well, where did you get that from? He said, it was in my mother's purse.
Oops.
I said, you know what? I said, I'll give you $1 for that book. I said, you can buy candy or popcorn, whatever you want. So I talked him to selling me that book for $1, but I knew his parents.
Well, it sounds like we need to get you on a semi-truck. Because that's what it sounds
I
like.
used to be his bus driver, okay? So when I made it a point to stop last at his house because I wanted to talk to his mother and give her the book stubs. So I told him, get off the bus and you go tell your mother to come and talk to me.
All right, we are running out of time, so I want to
I
ask.
handed her the book. I said, your son took it to school. He was going to take it to the shop and treat his friends with it. And that was the craziest thing that ever happened to me.
Go for it. It's like, we have a lot of young people in the room, speaking of second and third graders being the most ideal students. First of all, take note. Second of all, I would love for all of you to leave a piece of advice for why we should keep this spirit going, and one piece of advice you would give to make sure that everyone in this room feels as amazing as you did blazing trails for the first time. May, you want to start?
Well, you know, we're all forgetting, well, we're all old enough to remember the day Pearl Harbor was bombed. And we all remember, I hope we all remember the day that the World War II was over. I mean, these are memories that will live in our lives forever. I can remember the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed. You know, it was a Sunday, and my sister and I were at a matinee. And we came home, and our folks were sitting by the radio very nervous and very excited. We said, what had happened? They said Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. I was a teenager, and I stood there, and I said, I don't think I know where Pearl Harbor is. We knew Hawaii, but we didn't know Pearl Harbor. And as I traveled with the veterans, I found out so many of them didn't know either. You know, we weren't sophisticated about the rest of the world at that time. And I said, you know, that lives in our heart forever. We'll never forget that day. But I have to tell you my story, the day when World War II was over. That was kind of a fun day. My husband and I were on our way. He lived in the East, and he had a 2 weeks leave. And so we were home for a 2-week vacation. And on our way back to Washington State, we were on the train. It was, I'd say, 90% military. And as we left Chicago, when you pass Chicago, I believe all the trains are run by steam and water. They're electric up until Chicago. And World War II was declared while we were on that train. And every town we'd stop, everywhere we'd go, the people would meet that train with pots and pans and just all kinds of excitement. I don't know where these veterans got the booze, but by the time we got back to Washington State, we had some sick pops on that train. But you know what? They were going back to be deployed, maybe. They were so happy now the war was over and they didn't have to go back. They could go home.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you all have stories to tell about the end of the war. And
Hopefully
it's so amazing. I just love working with these ladies.
I do too.
There's so many of them, and they're so wonderful.
They really are. I want to say thank you one more time, ladies, for all that you did. I think this is testament to courage that isn't just a relic of history. It's courage that's palpable and transcendable through generations. So.
Now I have something to say about Raya.
Oh no.
When Raya was in the 5th grade, she built this memorial. She wrote to me, and I thought, oh, she's in the 5th grade. Now she'll just forget this in a week or two. Look at her now. She's through college, and look what she's done. She's got a memorial for us women in Washington. Isn't that great? Yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate you listening. And yeah, do we have time? Can we? I would love to. Yeah, sure. There's some more
You're sweet, you're so good.
You're so
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. My question to you is, there were probably certain expectations you had of your future before the war showed up. And what were those expectations, and how did the war change that?
So expectations changed, right? When you went into the workforce, how did you handle the expectations that you had originally changing?
I think I could tell that.
All right.
My expectations before the war were probably that in the Midwest I'd get married and have children. After the war, no way. The war gave us a kind of backbone to stand up and say no, and to reject things that were not for us. And also to, if you get a lemon, make lemonade, that sort of thing. My life changed a lot. I, as I said, wanted to be a veterinarian, okay? I couldn't do that. After the war, I went to school, you know, and had those experiences where I was rejected in the workforce because I was a woman. What I did instead was to move to Berkeley, California, enroll in Cal, and I finished my bachelor's, finished my master's, and got my PhD. I taught school for 30 years, and in my 40s, I learned to fly an airplane and belonged to the 99s, the licensed women pilots. So my life was changed by the war. I was able to do things. I was able to stand up and say no.
In this little small town that I lived, there was no beauty shop, so I was doing everybody's hair. And my uncle told me that if I wanted to go to school, he'd drive me to Pittsburgh and I would get a diploma and then I'd open up a shop in town. Well, that never happened because of the war. My uncle, the war started, and this just happened 2 weeks before the war. He got drafted, so I had no way to get to Pittsburgh. So I never became a beautician. I became a mom instead after years. Yeah. I did work for, I don't know if I told you ladies, I did work for Western Union when I quit at Glenelg Martin. I worked writing papers out, words not coming, and I was so quick and so small, they sent me upstairs to send out telegrams. I worked there for 7 months, and then we got shipped to Greenville, Mississippi.
Thank you for sharing.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you all very, very much for your dedication.